started. So I've been sharing my screen. Hopefully you've been seeing. If not, let me know. Okay, so as you can see, I'm going to start off with TxDOT.gov website and kind of navigate so you can see where I'm pulling the resources to have our discussion today. Okay, first thing I'm going to do, we're going to go to our 24 specification. So most of you are probably within TxDOT. So pretty much do business, you got your project development, and then your specifications comes first. All right, all the information is going to be under the 2024. And we look at everything that we're going to discuss today mostly pertains to the 200 series, but we will cover a little of item 132. So as you can see here, if you're not familiar with this, here's the 2024 specifications, and each group has information. So I'm going to cover the 200 items relative regarding this topic, and I'm going to scroll down through these resources. So I'm going to start. So as you can see, we have multiple resources here, but the one thing that we added specifically for this topic was a guidance document. And I want to start off with that. And everything pulls up nicely. Okay, the background, why we are going to require random density testing locations, density and moisture, is right here, first sentence. The FHWA, they conducted a stewardship review of TxDOT specifications and procedures. This was around 2021. And what they had come back with is that anything used for acceptance needs to be random. Inspection testing has to be from a random location or random sample. Has to be using random numbers, okay? So that, in regards to soils and base, that all fell on density testing, moisture density testing. Okay, so that's where this topic started from. And I would like to start off by saying all that we're changing, or all that the only thing FHWA wanted changed was where you took the sample, meaning when you take the sample does not change. When you take the sample does not change, okay? How you take the sample does not change. The only thing that's going to change through our discussion today is where you take the sample for the most part. It has to be from a random testing location. All right, so first I wanted to start off with a little background. Now you know where we're coming from, why we're doing this. And again, quick FHWA mandate. That was a pretty quick summary there, other than everything else we discussed. But in this location, we do have that guidance document. Okay. I also wanted to show a slide. And for those who have not attended a spec seminar, as probably most of you have known, TxDOT, working with AGC and TxAPA, put on around 7 regional specification seminars. So I'm going to go, these are the 200s. And one of the topics that I covered quickly, briefly, because there are several slides and not enough time, here is a slide that I covered. And regarding the item 200s as well as item 132, the random density and moisture testing locations. This is completely new. It's going to be, it has been implemented for all embankment and base specifications. So again, item 132 and all the 200 series, they do now, anything that required density testing requires it at random locations. How's this going to work? The contractor will provide the engineer with the beginning and ending station numbers. That's for the land completed, the area that you're going to test. Again, when this does not change anything when you're going to test it, okay? Where we have a test procedure, text 115 density, that's the procedure to run your density gauge. That hasn't changed, but we added a part 4 to that, and I'm going to get into that a little later. And what I'm going to do now is get into the spec so we can go through the actual wording of how it's worded. So one thing I want to say, if you have any questions, just speak out. We don't need to wait. Yeah, just speak out. Okay, so we kind of briefly touched upon the guidance document. Now we went through what we talked about, the slide that was presented at our spec seminar. And now I'm going to go into the text. So I'm going to pull up item 247 as an example. Going down to density and moisture control. Okay. So the language has been added. This is item 247, again, applicable to all other soils and base embankment. We refer to the engineer will determine random locations in accordance to 115 part 4. Anything before that doesn't change. Specifications didn't change. You're still compacting to 100% for base, 95 for treated, etc. We didn't change any of the specifications. Okay. Now, you're going to use, and we're going to go through this test procedure. I'm giving you a big picture here. Okay. So we have our test procedure. The land, the area gets completed. The contractor will provide you the beginning and ending station numbers. You all will have to determine the width, measure the width. And we're going to go through our template as well. So you need to determine random testing locations, okay? Now, when the language in the spec, when you don't meet density, the engineer may perform additional testing to determine that extent of the area that needs to be corrected. However y'all do it, this does not change. Rework, rip it up, recompact it, whatever, add moisture, however y'all typically do it, that doesn't change. And I'm repeating a few things because I'm going to cover things that we discussed last week. And I want to make sure I communicate them that way we're very clear because they had a lot of good comments last week. All right. And in regards to accepting results that may be a little low, that has not changed. About 1 in 5 if the density is no more than 3 pounds below. So that has not changed. Okay. This is the same language that has been added to all the specs, okay? Test procedure and what to do when it does not meet in regards to the engineer can perform additional testing. The language is harmonized, the same, item 132 and 200s. All right, good. So, what's next? What I want to do is get into the test procedure. This test procedure 115 has been revised. A lot of the sections and information has been clarified, more concise. And then we added the last part for random testing. So random selection, nothing, just like I mentioned earlier, the contractor will provide you the beginning and ending station numbers. So you're going to determine that length. Now we are going to, there is a standalone Excel template, and I'll get to that in a minute. There's just a lot of information to cover. So I'm trying to keep it, trying to make it flow. test procedure, it's for y'all that are familiar with hot mix, pretty same concept. You got a random number, you got your length, multiply that, and that's how you get your station number, and then you have a width offset. So you have a random number for length, a random number for width, you get your length and width. The one thing that is the width offset. We did keep the language the same as hot mix within 2 foot of a compacted edge. This had a lot of discussion last week, so I want to touch upon this. Is that 2 feet too far from the edge? That was a concern a lot of people had last week. And, you know, because one person said, or a few people said, hey, we have subgrade widening, or we have widening that's only 3 feet. Well, okay. So we are going to look at this. We're going to try to change that to be possibly bring it down to 1 foot, or have within 2 foot unless otherwise directed by the engineer, because we can't account, right, for every scenario in a spec or a test procedure. So we're going to approach it one of those 2 ways, because, you know, it's a partnership with industry, my division director, and we'll probably have more discussions internally after this, see which way we can approach it. But feedback is good. So if any of y'all have anything you know, you think is better. Okay. So that's the test procedure. And what I'm going to do, also in this website, is our Excel file. And in this Excel file, this is the template. It's a standalone right now, meaning it's available there. Save it to your desktop. We are trying to get this uploaded in Site Manager, so it's available on the it's a C drive or what have you location folder. And pretty simple, same header, nothing new. However, you put your beginning station, ending station, these are what you're going to get from the contractor, and then measure the width. And you have these 4 buttons here: generate random test locations, and we allow up to 20. I'll just put 5. Then, okay. Now, the width, we put a maximum width. We have the width up to 50 feet, which is not something that's going to be typical, right? But we allow up to 50 feet. We had 20, but we give that latitude further out. I'll just leave that as 15. Okay. So as you can see, we have our random numbers. And then we get our random station, our width offset. Now we put adjustments here just because, remember, the 2 foot. It's mostly 2 foot from the width offset. But that's pretty much it right there. Pretty simple, straightforward. Now, how does this tie into Site Manager? Well, a couple of things. One way is using this file and then making a PDF and saving it as an attachment. Another is, here's your 115 template. So what you can do here, as you can see, it has a stationing. Okay. And then remarks. So one thing that could be done is you run the program here, and then you can enter your stationing, and the remarks you can enter your width. And then however you save project files, you can then save this file here to have record of it. So we were hoping to add it into this file here. However, there's a lot of programming involved. There are macros. It's not as easy as what we're hoping. So we're not sure if that, because a lot's changed with Site Manager, and a lot of that falls on us in terms of template upgrades, and we don't have the staff to have the program skills and knowledge. So we have a basic template here, and that can be added here. But we are looking into it to see if that's a possibility within our means. Anyway, so there's a couple of ways that the data could be stored. All right. So we know why. We looked at the guidance document, right? We know why we're doing all of this because of the background. We know the background. FHWA mandate. Again, we're not mandating how, I mean, we're not mandating how, we're not mandating when. All that FHWA mandates is where. It's got to be a random testing location. Something that also came up last week was, hey, what if I see a spot that's pumping or that's not stable or whatever? Can I go or whatever, segregated? Can I go run a shot? Yes, you can. I mean, item 5, control the work, you can test anywhere you want, right? That doesn't change. Your first shot, though, well, depending, right? If you see an area that's not stable, that's a different scenario, right? You can address that before. But once you start, after you determine the land is ready, it's stable, you can go and write the random number, whether you do that at the beginning of the day. We don't have any language in the specification to be very explicit in terms of when you produce those numbers. So as you can see here, it's really at your discretion whether you want to do them up front, whether you want to do them the day of testing in your pickup truck or whatever. It's very open. I think that, the approach we're taking is we're trying to keep it very basic, very straightforward. And then as we go along, and there may be, just like the offset, we'll go ahead and make changes. We'll work on a special provision or revise a test procedure or whatever. But I think our first go at this is to keep it basic, keep it simple, straightforward. And then if the changes are needed, which are great, nothing's perfect, we'll go ahead and work with y'all on a special provision if we need to. But definitely the first thing we're going to look at internally is that with offset. All right. So any questions? Oh, very good. Let's see, what else can I cover? So we do have that guidance document. Oh, something I do want to cover here in the test procedure. All right. So again, I know I keep saying this because we got a lot of comments last week. We're not telling you we're not changing when you typically take this. We're just referring to where, right? It's got to be a random location. So you determine that random number, you found that testing location, you go ahead and take a shot, you go ahead and take a reading. And that reading does not meet 100%. So we did add language. We did in our conversations with the spec committee and industry, the concern was how valid is that first shot? Well, what is the procedure next, right? If the test, how do we validate that? Yes, you go ahead and take another shot, but we thought we came to a consensus was, okay, that first reading does not meet. What do we do next? Previously, in the past, the procedure had it optional to rotate the gauge 90 degrees, right? If you didn't know if that reading may have been suspect or you wanted to check it, it was optional. You can rotate it and take another reading. So now what we're requiring when that reading does not meet spec is to rotate the gauge. So it requires the gauge to be rotated 90 degrees, take a reading, another 90 degrees, which is 180 total, take a reading, and then another 90 degrees, which brings a total of 270. So it'll be 4 readings. So when the first reading doesn't meet spec, 3 additional readings must be taken every 90 degrees. And then the average of those 4 measurements will be determined the acceptance, or whether it determines when it meets or not. Okay. So instead of just jumping and running another test at a different location, we've opted to go this direction to where the gauge is rotated 90 degrees 4 times. So you got 4 measurements at that same pin location. Average the results. That's your final measurement. That's your final reading for that location. Okay, aside from that, another comment that I remember that came from last week was we don't specify how long to take that reading. We don't say 30 seconds, 1 minute, 4 minutes. We refer to, let's see right here, look at the language. Measure the density of moisture as per gauge manufacturer's recommendations. So another change we're going to make in here is we're going to defer to a 1 minute reading. Make sure that everybody's running it for a minimum of a minute. That way to be consistent. So 2 things we're going to be looking in this procedure. That's one, so that we can be consistent in our measurements. But also, like I mentioned earlier, is this width offset. Is 2 feet too far from the compacted edge? Well, you know, like I mentioned earlier from our meeting last week, people had concerns when they're doing widening and they have a 3 foot, 4 foot short widening. Well, that offset, how do you do it, right? Okay, so we're going to address that there. I also wanted to touch again with item 5, you can take a test anywhere you want. This process does not take that away from inspectors. Right. Let's see. So again, any questions, just speak out.
Yeah, if we're held to a random location, how are we supposed to take a visual test and say, oh, there's a bad spot? And then, well, no, Mr. Contractor says we're held to a random location.
Well,
That's going to be a fight all day.
Yeah, good comment. And we've heard that last week, and all that we can do is defer to items 5 and 6. And we understand it's not always black and white, but this is an FHWA mandate, right? Unfortunately, I think it'll be important to communicate this at the pre-pave meeting and make sure everything's up front. And it's very clear on the expectations.
So that comment doesn't really hold any air. There's so much turnover between inspectors, contractors. Nobody's going to be at the pre-con on a multi-year job that's still going to be there several years later. You hope so, but I mean, that's just not the case. Can we add some verbiage that the inspector can override the test or the randomness if it's inconsistent?
That's probably something with a general note. That'll be very
I guess,
difficult.
Richard, I just want to add something. So I guess, Zach, to your point, so what's the difference in item 5 saying the engineer has the right to do that with TxDOT being quote unquote the engineer? How's it any different that the spec says or a general note says it? I mean, it's still saying the exact same thing. At the end of the day, their engineer's going to have to make a decision, and their decision is what's final. I mean, based on the spec, as the engineer, your answer is the final answer.
Yeah, but the contractor's going to sit across from you and say, well, you can only test me in that random location.
I would just argue that that's not what the spec says. It's never said that, and even with this random location being what the feds want, right? I mean, when you do hot mix, you're held to a random location. But what do you do whenever one of those things fails? You don't go back and test. If you have a failing section, you're no longer just told, oh, you can only test the random locations. Once something fails, you're allowed to go back and do whatever you want. And they don't argue with that on hot mix.
Yeah, but we're talking about dirt subgrade, so we're going to have to tear off all those top layers to get down to those failing materials.
Well, once again, I would say that hot mix is a lot more expensive than dirt, and they don't argue about it in hot mix.
So
Yeah,
you make
because the time
a
impact's
good
not
point
there.
about a failing result. So what could you do, right? Something fails, maybe go to proof rolling. It's not like that one shot fails, oh, everything's bad, right? You got to determine that extent. To me, the pre-con, I get it. This turnover. I think the thought is, all right, the shot fails, the reading fails. Let's look at proof rolling. Or take another random test. And I'm not saying you test it until it passes. Take another test. Or say, look, it fails. I want to see proof rolling. It's on there. It's on them. I mean, there's going to have to be something, right? This is an FHWA mandate. That's just the way it is. And
So if the first shot fails, we do the 4 turns. Do we have to use a random number for the next test?
So good point. We take the 4 at the same pin location. The result still fails. Yeah, then you'll have to come up with another random number.
Or you take that first random generated spot, it fails, and then was a bad spot visually to you, you still got to take it anyway. Then you're going to do your judgment call, and you're going to start testing to try to isolate where the bad spot is. And it's like, it's no different than the way we were doing it before. You may have to fix that spot. It's a bad spot no matter what, right?
Yeah, so I guess if I were a contractor, would you not want to proof roll it? Versus, I mean, as your inspectors out there, would that not be, is that not a better approach, right? The first test fails. You're right. How do I determine the extent of that area? Do I want to be running more shots? Do I want to be taking more readings? Or I think those are the options that inspectors have.
I don't think the issue here is if the first shot fails, because if the first shot fails, then the spec goes on that you can do additional testing. The problem is if the first shot passes and that was your random location, but you can see other areas, that's where the spec wording becomes problematic, is if the first random location passes and you can visibly see other areas that aren't your random number, that's the problem.
And item 5 wouldn't help with that? Because item 5 would
so
give
that's
you
where we're going to
latitude.
say technically, but we're still going to get into these arguments with contractors, and the word partnering and unfairness and things like that are going to come up. So
Yeah, we yeah, we get it, and that's where I think, yeah, we get it. Again,
It's
how
going to be a big argument.
Okay, I have one thing. If you fail, wouldn't that be also a factor as to how significant that fail was, whether it need to proof roll again or other different measures need to be taken based on the percentage of failure?
That's a great point, right? Because the spec says 1 out of 5, but that cannot be more than 3 pounds. That's a good point. Yeah, we're not changing how y'all do business when something doesn't meet, right? If you're just taking your regular normal reading, density reading, and that fails, what do? We're not changing that. All that we're changing is saying, hey, if that number fails, you got to rotate the gauge to validate and take an average. That's what changes. Now, if your final average doesn't meet, we're not changing what you normally do.
Isn't the random number just a minimum? Because like if you go to the testing and sampling checklist, doesn't it give you a number of tests that you're supposed to record?
Yeah, exactly. So the frequency, 1 every 3,000 cubic yards, nothing of that changes. What's in Site Manager doesn't change in terms of frequency. You're exactly right. I mean, you have item 5, you got minimum sampling and testing. Yeah, none of that changes.
I had a question. I had a section. They running the test. It failed, but we know the material is 100% compaction because roll proofing and the equipment on it, it didn't move an inch on it. But what we're gonna do with the failing test? But we know the material is solid like a rock.
So you're going to report your result here, right? You could just put it in the remarks. I mean, what do you typically do now, right? I guess whatever you do today, we're not changing that. So however you handle that doesn't change.
Richard, I'll answer the question real quick. So, I mean, just last week we were doing some stuff here in town. We dug down. We were doing a repair. We got into a soft spot. Right, we're not going to go run a curve. We dug the stuff out. We proof rolled it, and we made a comment just saying that, everything was inspected visually by proof rolling. We're not going to. I mean, at that point, when you run into problems, you're not going to pull material, go run a curve, wait 3 days to do a curve when you're doing some kind of repair. Now, some of this stuff, even if you're having problems, I mean, nothing stops you or you getting with your area engineer, your assistant area engineer and saying, hey, look, the gauge isn't reading well, but proof rolling, we're showing the results are good. I mean, all that means is you go in, you can write down whatever you want the density and zero out a density test and just say that you move to accepting via proof rolling. I mean, as an engineer, you have the authority to do it.
Yeah, great point. Yeah, and remember everyone, we're not changing how you do your business. So you've done this before, nothing changes. However, you saw a spot that was pumping or looked segregated, whatever you did before, we're not telling you to change it. However you address that with the contractor doesn't change. Yeah, a lot of good comments, a lot of good feedback. And that was pretty much the same as what we were hearing last week, which rightfully so, but we want to defer, right, to item 5 and just let everything that, you've been speaking about today, James, and yeah, great comments. And I've already said this, I know I sound like a broken record, that we're not changing how you do your business. It's just that shot. When you do go take a shot, it needs to be at a random location. Unless there's an extenuating circumstance, right? The pumping and the moving and the too much moisture or whatever. Yeah.
Hey, Richard, there's a question in the chat, and I know all of our inspectors are going to be asking me the same question. Wes is asking, can the generator only be used once per project? And I would think the answer would be no. It would be used each time the contractor says he's ready for densities.
So that's going to be so that's a good point. Good question. That's going to be at your call. We're not going to be explicit there. The only thing is we only have a maximum. You can't put more than 20. So this template here has a max of 20 readings. So however you think that'll last y'all. But kind of,
I guess the answer would be, it would be based on your project and how many yards you have. If a max of 20 fits in your total quantity for the project, then yeah, you could do it once for the project. But it's likely not going to fit.
Yeah. Whatever y'all's preferences.
Right.
Do 20 or do it in your pickup before you take the shot, I mean, whatever y'all prefer to do, we're not being explicit until we're told. Our direction from FHWA was only to make it random. We were given the flexibility of how to implement it. So we thought this was a good approach, coming in and not being very explicit, tying your hands, so to speak. So we'll see how it goes this way, and maybe, in a year or whatever, we say, hey, you know what? Yeah, let's have these kind of issues. We come up with a special provision. Or we update the test procedure. This is our first round, so to speak. So it's very open-ended to an extent. Beginning station numbers, yeah, the spec is worded, the contractor provides you that, but if you think it's better, you all determine that yourselves, hey, it's nothing, you can do what you want.
Hey, Richard, this is Heath Bozeman over here at the Plainview area office in Lubbock District.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I'm looking at all this, and I can certainly hear some of the issues coming up. But I guess it was brought up earlier about, hey, we've been doing this with hot mix testing for years. It's actually a benefit because there's not argument, because you are going to have those areas like, hey, this is bad. We need to test this area, and you still can't. This is going to take a lot more less. I think we're talking that, hey, we're going to be arguing a lot with the contractor. We used to do that with the asphalt until we got the QCQA program going. Now everything's randomized. There's no question. I've actually seen arguing's gone down. Now we're going to have those special situations, and that really gets to be an AE or the assistant AE's decision on what you're going to do on that. Because here's the other scenario that no one's brought up. What if you have test passing and it's pumping? And we've had that problem, like, yeah, it's passing, but we're not accepting it. And then that gets into that situation where you're going to have to have that fortitude to talk with the contractor. And most contractors that we've had experience with, they want to make sure it's put in there. And again, dirt work's pretty easy. We've ripped up lands like, this isn't working, redo it. So, the other deal was brought up, hey, when asphalt fails, we go to referee, and it's still like, yeah, it's got to come out. So I think for the most part, this is actually going to be a benefit. Again, we're all going to have those big bad sections. Inspectors are just going to have that fortitude to talk. No one wants to go to an argument setting, but honestly, that's what we get paid for. So anyway, just wanted to put my little 2 cents in there to say I think this will be a pretty good setup, and I think it'll actually be a benefit out in the field.
Great, thank you. We hope so. I mean, at the end of the day, we have to do what we have to do, right? So FHWA mandates it. We were given that latitude of, hey, not that we don't care how you do it, but you have to implement it. So whenever the next stewardship review comes in, it's in our spec. And of course, FHWA approved the spec, right? So we got a good go. And yeah, I think at the beginning, the pre-con, pre-pave, very important to address all this. But a good comment there. We have a couple of comments in the chat. Shannon, your statement was that AGC was part of the specification creation. With that being said, is this something that the contractors will be made aware of the new specification? Or is this something that could be news to them at the pre-con meetings? Well, as you may know, there's a process, procedures and specifications go to the AGC and TxAPA for review. And then they come back to the spec committee. So all that we can assume and hope is that everybody was, well informed. We've had 7 specification seminars where, this was communicated, not as well as today, of course. But what I could possibly do, and I think I will reach out to Thomas Bohuslav at the AGC and see maybe we need to do a teams with on their end. That's a good point. Actually, I will do that, Shannon. That's a good point. A good point, Shannon, but I will do that. Okay. Again, good comments, but yeah, it's going to be a learning process, right? We're just going to have to go through it. And like I said, there are things that come up. We have a special provision, right? We can adjust things as we go to make things better. But pre-con, item 5, and again, we're not changing how you all are doing your business. How you
Hey,
see a spot that's pumping. Go
I got
ahead.
a quick question. So are they still doing their QC? Is the contractor supposed to still do their quality control testing?
Yes, again, this is not changing any of that.
Okay, so can we ask for their results before we do the randoms?
Well, again, we're not changing how y'all are doing whatever y'all are doing. So if that's what you do now, hey, we're not changing that. You know, the language does not change anything other than just taking that shot at a random location. So if that's what you do now, definitely yes. Does not change.
hey, Richard, I had one just on Shannon's deal. Um, when y'all were doing the spec, I think Shannon's point was when we were rewriting the spec, didn't AGC have a chance to look at this? Wasn't this included in the spec rewrite that they gave the thumbs up on? I mean, do you remember? I'm not sure if you were on the other side at that time or with TxDOT when that was going on, but didn't the other side get a chance to give the thumbs up that they understood this was coming out, whether they liked it or not? Do you remember if they were opposed to this?
Yeah, good comment. Good question. Definitely so.
My question was what Richard issued or discussed originally, because, you know, we have multiple contractors, some contractors, everybody coming in. And I was just wondering if, I know that y'all have like, you don't call it anymore, but the dope book. And, you know, is there any way to ensure that all the primes are notified of this? Because not everyone is a member of the AGC.
Yeah, good point. The best we could do on our end, right? I mean, if there's another avenue to communicate this, I will definitely do that. I just don't know what. We're doing it. We did it, spec seminars, AGC meetings. We're doing it at TxApp partner and quality meetings. Trying to reach out to everybody. Yes, they're all hot mix producers, but if they do some base work, they're getting that. So our outreach, that's our effort. But if there's another group, yes, without a doubt, we definitely will. But in terms of James' comment, yes, it was very extensively vetted. And there was a lot of discussion on this, not only with AGC, within the spec committee, the 200 series spec committee, and then it went to the TxDOT spec committee. So yeah, there's a lot of discussion.
Hey,
Someone
Richard,
had,
I might have
someone
missed.
had asked about is this effective immediately? Or is this, you know, since you're referencing the 2024 spec book, is this something that starts after on projects that are let September 1st and further?
Yeah, excellent point. So two things. There is a special provision out there, and I should have probably started off with that. Item 247, 005, starting February lettings, it was added into that. So any flex base that was let in February, that's where this special provision was included. So starting with February lettings of item 247, this random is required. With all other items, it's required, I believe, in September is when the lettings start for the new spec book. Yeah, good question. Okay. Anything else? All right. Well, if y'all don't have any more, oh, another chat. Access to Taylor. Okay. So the one thing we had done is we emailed it out. So to those who received this Teams meeting invite, the template was emailed out to all of them, all of those people. And the plan, we have a quality assurance section that's working with construction division site manager. So we're going to get it on the SMAP, SMAPP folder. So we're going to get it in there as well. So eventually, yes, it will be available internally. Well, TxDOT.gov or through, however you get your site manager templates is where it'll be.
I think I missed a comment you just made a while ago. Did you say this is effective on current projects or only on the 2024 projects?
It's only effective on item 247, projects that were let in February. However, in regards to one embankment, 132, and everything else in the 200s, that will be 2024 specs. So I guess letting start in September.
One other question. On this particular process, going forward, is this going to be part of the certification training for the SB 102?
Great question. Yes, that's been all included. So right now, any training, SB 102 training, has already had this added to it. So the training classes that are ongoing now are discussing this topic, including this topic, and the certification classes are also including that part 4 of Text 115. So yes.
Thanks.
And just like in the past, it's just a test question. The exam will cover the topic. Yeah, good comment. And again, keep in mind that of the website, all of the resources are there. The 2024. And we've added the Excel file. And this is actually, I should have that comment previously. So it is available externally right here. I totally, so it is available right now externally, and that's at our 2024 website location. But like I mentioned, it will be available in Site Manager. Okay. Well, we got a few more minutes. If you have any more questions, comments, a lot of good discussion. Well, that's all I have. If y'all don't have anything else. So what I will do, I'll reach out to AGC and see if they want how we can communicate this more within industry. When it comes to the Texas Asphalt Pavement Association, we are bringing this some attention during their partner and quality meetings. So hopefully we get the word out there some more. All right. Well, my email is here, but if you have TxDOT, feel free to reach out to me anytime. And if you're using this and you say, hey, this really isn't working out here, reach out to me. And if a special provision, we can discuss it. I can bring it to my division director. We can have other discussions with industry. We want to make it right and do the best we can. All right. Well, thank you all for joining. And you all have a good day.
Done.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.